Hello, greetings. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. Welcome to the Catalyst Astrology Report. This is looking at the week ahead. Today is the 15th of July, 2022, and we're going to be looking throughout the weekend and the following week leading up to July 22nd, 2022, which is when the sun moves into Leo. So we are coming into our third quarter moon, right? So we're in our third quarter. We'll be coming into the fourth lunar quarter. So we'll be coming into the real waning moon period and the balsamic moon period. So third quarter moon, always some sort of crisis happens where we have to reorient ourselves and where we're focused. So we're going to go over some astrology today. That's going to be the primary thing we're going to focus on because there is, there's just enough there to just focus on for today's broadcast. So how is everyone feeling? Boy, that full moon was something else. It does appear, and the reason that the title of today's broadcast and with the astrology report of the week coming up is about obstacles, about like hitting those brick walls, about confronting those things that really that we prefer to maybe turn around and avoid or find a different way around it. But as has been brought up in a number of different interactions and scenarios, and we've all heard it, right? This is one of those situations where the only way out is through, and we can bust through our walls, or we can establish where the core of our foundation really is as the walls are being busted down. So there's a little of both things happening, especially with Cancer and Capricorn and Pluto in Capricorn. Boy, we're going to talk about that today too, because the sun, we're going to have a Mercury Sun Cazimi this weekend. That is when Mercury and the sun are in a conjunction, and they will be at the same longitudinal degree, which will be in conjunction also with the fixed star Procyon. I'm going to talk all about that for the Catalyst Classroom session that is going to be recorded and posted by the end of today. Fingers crossed. There's just a lot there to get through, and it takes a lot of time to, as anyone knows, to organize all of the material and have it scripted in a way that's going to be concise, but also thorough and full of information. So that's going to be coming. Everything you need to get on my email list, to book readings, to get into Subscribestar, which is where you get the Catalyst Classroom content. All of that's in the description box below. I am going to share real quick before we launch into it, actually, the flyer for that Catalyst Classroom session number 3. So this month we've been focusing on, focusing on Black Moon Lilith, our new moon in Cancer. This month was also in conjunction with Black Moon Lilith, so each session has been building on the previous in terms of the different historical, mythological, archetypal, astrological connections to Lilith. The last session, number 2, we actually, I went into all of the houses and signs that Lilith is in and gave a breakdown, and you have slides that you can refer back to and resources. So this week's session is going to be all about the Starseed activations, Sirius and Procyon, and not just because of Black Moon Lilith, although that is a very deeply powerful connection for her to have both of these activations during this month. But this is where the sun and Mercury come into conjunction. They're both going to be in opposition to Pluto this week, this at the end of this weekend. So this is a really powerful, very powerful time, and is just emotionally overwhelming in some ways that this full moon really was. It's going to be for the best, right? To be able to establish what is impacting that stable but permeable membrane that Cancer represents, right? The shell of the crab, right? The emotional lattice structure of family and spiritual community and a sense of belonging, right? All these Cancerian energies, the womb, right? The Holy Grail, all of these ways to conceptualize it as the larger structure institutionally is going through its destruction. Opposite Pluto, the story of Procyon, and of course the Syrian starseeds. This is all going to be covered in this week's Catalyst Classroom. So if you're interested, you should check out what it takes to be a subscriber through Subscribestar, and then you have access to all of this content. Every week I post sessions with resources available to the subscriber. Plus, you have the Starseed Fellowship. That's our Zoom meeting every other week. That's just an open forum for starseeds and lightworkers and just anyone who is on this spiritual path to really just be able to engage with information and each other, get support, share ideas, all of that stuff. And that's all part of a monthly subscription of $5 whole. So it's worth it to check out. I think there's so much content that is available here. So that's what's going to be going on here, and a special guest channeling that is going to be part of this as well. That a very good friend and colleague and Starseed healer as well who offered this. So we're going to be doing a Lionsgate 88 event that has not been solidified in any way, shape, or form except energetically. And now that the template is set, I know that the organization will come through. So that's that piece of promotional material. Also, just a reminder, return clients, I'm doing a Starseed Appreciation reading sale, $27 for a 30-minute reading. It is a recording. I've been doing a number of these. They are so just powerful. I mean, me channeling the astrology is just I've been really enjoying it. So this is if it's still up on the website, it means I'm still offering it. So you can go to catalystenergies.net, linked in the description box below. It'll take you to the homepage. It'll give you options of how to book this particular reading. So only return clients. So you've had to have had me do your starseed or your natal chart reading or some other service already, so that we can get the most out of this 30 minutes in relation to what's going on for you right now. So, my friends, how are you? It does feel like that every irritating thing that could possibly seep up out of the darkness of one's soul really came up over this full moon. For me personally, it's been a lot in the dreamscape, in the astral, and so it's a number of experiences, especially depending on where the moon is in your chart. For me, it was in the 12th into the first house right now. So Aquarian rising people, kind of making that transition from the emotional connection to all that there is, all of your past lives, all of the collective karma, just coming through in usually the way that this energy seems to want to come through. A moon in the 12th house, right? Dreams, fantasy, shamanic journeys, trance states, or through just totally unconscious, mediumship, or as a completely unconscious vessel. That can happen too. So rage, abandonment, a sense of being forced out of somewhere, like all of these really strong Procyon starseed origin type of themes here that are really being amplified in a lot of ways. And I feel like that this Sun, Mercury, not only conjunction, but each in turn over the weekend opposite Pluto is just going to highlight this this dynamic here so much about returning back to the source of our own life and the source of our own soul's where our soul is being quenched, right? This is about that root system that goes deeply into the medium of our growth, which in fact is Taurus, if we're looking at the chart kind of in an esoteric fashion here. The Aries is the seed, Taurus, or the second house, is the soil, and as you can see, we have Mars, Uranus, the North Node. They're going to be conjunct on August 1st. This is a big deal, and I've been talking about it a lot, and I've been bringing it up in people's people's readings for them, because a new continent rising out of the ocean, whether it's going to be literal, whether it's esoteric, it doesn't really matter at this point, because it's all part of the same template of experience energetically. So this, if it rises in you, if it's rising out in the social identity that you have, depending on where you're finding it in the chart, it's going to be a forceful, assertive, aggressive at the worst, right? With Mars involved and Uranus, right? This trigger that is like a spark of lightning that then is forced out into the world and allows a space to be created, so something spontaneous can really emerge out of the formlessness, right? Much like a new continent rising out of the ocean. I mean, if there was ever a time that there would be a physical emergence in some ways that would be the result of a sudden shift in the material reality that we're in, that is part of our soul's evolution, I mean, now would be the time, right? So that's going to be August 1st. Right now, though, we are just looking at this incredible week, right? So much continues to happen. Since this full moon, so we're kind of in this dissemination phase where we've had a culmination, and now we're working on integrating it internally. Like, what does that even mean? So we feel things, we see things, we've touched very personally and emotionally, very intuitively, way more accessible from our subconscious, those things that are presenting obstacles in our life, whatever they are, and they are most assuredly stemming from some sort of lack of alchemizing, transmuting the very essence of our spirit and our physical reality, or our form, right? It all kind of comes back to that question. So where have you been experiencing it? I think that's a good question to ask or to share about. Learning to be okay. Alex K says, learning to be okay with doing nothing, noticing the trees as I drive by them. Boy, this is so much about learning and finding that stillness within you, because when you're able to do that, and this full moon was a really big part, it's not only do you create space for something to grow, something new to grow, something to grow off of where you've been, it does challenge many of us that are in this, that have been consistently just kind of burning ourselves out on no nourishment from the waters of our soul. And it requires, this is the lesson of the goddess, this is the lesson of this is so potent to what is going to be happening over the weekend and the Catalyst Classroom. Just that if it's just constant air and fire, right? What do you get? You get a desert, right? And somebody actually, gosh, it was so brilliant, brought up a comment on a video that I shared with them, because it was relevant to, the synchronicity was just so relevant to something coming up in their reading. And I haven't listened to it yet, but it's with Bridget Nielsen and Dan Winter. It's on YouTube. It's on Dan Winter's YouTube channel, and I'm saving it for the weekend because I knew that it was going to be like, whoa. And one of the things that she brought up in our conversation is how much, the patriarchy as a conception is, you can think of it as like this dry, arid desert. And it's the same thing, that without the feminine, right? Without the nourishment, without the soil, without the waters of the soul, right? Without the stillness, the receptivity, the passivity, not in a negative, apathetic way, but truly finding that space and void within you is where you hear, right? You really do hear and feel and embody, in a lot of ways, the essence of your own spirit. But it comes from that place. And if it's without that, and it's just air and fire, right? These are the masculine traits, then it's just a dry, arid desert. And in Egypt, when Sirius, as the fixed star Sirius, the heliacal rising of Sirius, was when the trigger, right? The trigger, that was the signal to the Egyptians that the Nile was going to rise. It was a seasonal, cyclical event that nourished and watered the fields, much like the Cancerian archetype is the vessel that holds the water. The land holds the water in order to nourish it and prepare it for growth of something new. And Egypt, ancient Egypt, was surely the breadbasket of the ancient world, even all over the place, right? And man, they really had it down. And so, the position of Sirius relative to us thousands of years ago is not where it is in terms of the zodiac, right? And that's because of the precession, right? The wobble of the planet and the precession, that the vernal equinox is changing as a result of this 1 degree arc every 70 some years or whatever. And to go through the entire 360, right, is like a 24 to 26,000 year cycle, right? This is the precession of the equinoxes. So where Cancer or Sirius was at that time is not the same, which also shows the progression of growth and cycle that we experience at a more cosmic level, right? And I feel like the Mayan calendar really tracked this precession. And that's 2012 was like that marker of beginning and end as we are reaching a new age. So, which is the age of Aquarius. So, it's the stillness. And Alex K, I mean, it's just, he really just brought it into a really simplistic way of experiencing it, learning to slow down, like pay attention to what's around. How are you going to know what's at the, what's in your inner voice when it's so deeply embedded in you, if you can't like find a way to shed away all of the obstacles? Something similar, my dad had a stroke at a fairly young age. He was in his late 40s. And he probably, had he not been seen medically when he did, he may have died, right? It's likely that would have happened. So I'm grateful for that. And that was one of the things he did too, is like when you come near to death like that, afterwards, it sobered him up, number one, and in a lot of ways. And he was able to really express that same type of experience, that he realized like he allowed himself to slow down and pay attention to things like nature and stuff like that. And it really had such a profound impact on his whole persona and his healing. Actually, like there's a lot of ancestral healing in that side of things that it started, I feel like then, his own healing started with that experience. And so that's an obstacle, right? That's a huge obstacle. And we have the opportunity to address those obstacles at any point where they are presenting some sort of, opposition to us. So that's getting quiet has really allowed us to see what has been working and what is not working, and what type of space we are creating and what it is we're inviting in, right? And again, if we're just being bombarded with the signals, or we are just trapped in the kind of delusion of Neptune and we can't get out of it, even though now it's retrograde, then this is where the deep intuition comes into play. So this is great because Mercury and the sun are both in a trine to Neptune this weekend. It's just like a direct connection to the source within via our ability to connect to our dreams, to cosmic consciousness, to compassion, to love, to deepen our intuition, to not fall into a pattern of escapism, but not shut ourselves off in total isolation either. And that's the Procyon story that has to be experienced if you're a Procyon starseed. And if you are not sure, guaranteed you got 24, 25, 26, 27 of Cancer Capricorn. You have this story embedded in your innate soul's journey and frequency. So, and there are other connections too, but that's the main one, which is where the Sun and Mercury and Pluto are this weekend. So this story is being highlighted big time over the weekend. So, and then you have Neptune that is also part of it in its retrograde, that is reminding us of the fallacy of totalitarianism in its essence, right? Everyone comes back to source, to unity consciousness, and with the intention of bringing that into the next cycle of growth. God is expanding via us, right? Being in material form. It's kind of like, can it happen? It's a grand experiment in some ways, and certainly Earth University. And we are all working on our Starseed dissertations right now. And, you know, that doesn't come without a considerable amount of study, effort, and a willingness to really transmute information into new understanding. So, which has been difficult considering the fact that the South Node has been in Sagittarius. I mean, it is really pushing us to evolve right now in terms of things that are way more about the material existence. And when the North Node was in Gemini, it was about letting go of our previous understanding and holding on how we've gotten there and letting it propel us forward to new ideas, new discoveries, pioneering new knowledge and exploring. And you can see how that really was a struggle for many of us, especially having such strong Sagittarius in our charts. Oh boy. That was really, really difficult to step away from or find the momentum in that dynamic of understanding big picture and truly a certain self-righteousness that is the dark side of Sagittarius and really dogmatic. Letting that go without letting that go and letting it push us towards discovery of new ideas. That was a really hard but necessary time that we had. So, Let's get into it. Let's look at this weekend because it's pretty powerful this weekend. I feel like that the full moon was just the culmination of like, okay, the last 2 years we feel into all of these feelings about what's worked, what needs to be released back, right? Where is our defeat? And as we saw, and I want to show you, this was pretty clear, and we'll get back to the chart. Look at our reading from Monday of the Starseed Ministry, the Prince of Swords in the middle, right? The mind just like, and Venus has just not been very helpful in this realm because, you know, Venus in Aquarius, Venus in Gemini, Venus in any of the swords is going to be the Princess of Swords. And it seriously can feel like an onslaught. And we've just been kind of back and forth. You know, how do I feel about this? How do I feel about that? And, you know, what does this feel like? What does that feel like? Back and forth, usually about relationships, resources, projects, anything that has value and meaning. So the ideas that have value and meaning are now, you know, we've just been going through this consistent feeling within ourselves. We're almost attracting in, because that's what Venus does, attracting in the opposing viewpoints, by way of what our resonance in our actual body is and our actual field itself. So our magnetism. And it hasn't been very easy, and we can feel very defeated. I've definitely been seeing that around me as well. So I just want to draw attention to that energy of, you know, you can feel defeated, but you still have to like face the obstacle. Now, I do get the sense that there is kind of like this visionary energy that's going to come in this weekend. And I think Mercury and Neptune, the Sun and Neptune, both of them in this trine is going to be a big part of this. As long as we don't just like find ourselves, you know, we don't want to drown in the ocean. We want to get back into the boat. And when we do that, there is something that can enter our experience that is like an endowment in some ways, but it comes from recognizing our own soul's journey through this whole process and that it's all interconnected with each other and it's all equally valuable, but that is not the same as equity, right? Equal outcomes. And that's the lesson here of this Neptune and Pisces at this degree, is that we come into this experience of oneness while we're here in order to then experience a new stage of growth, a new spark of life, which is what Aries represents. So I'm going to check in with the chat here real quick before I move on. Happy Friday, Emily. Barb says, hi all, obstacles indeed showing up, what we need to unblock in order to move forward. Nourishment really does seem to be the theme. I totally agree. Like literal nourishment of the soul, literal nourishment of your actual body. Like I've been so much more present with what's going into my body, like food-wise and anything I'm consuming, and then thoughts, right? Like an emotion, the thoughts that are present, and being much more able to kind of interrupt or redirect that energy as it's kind of starting to spiral. And the dream state, like I said, it's been a really explosive, right? So from rage to then abandonment, all of the old fears really coming up, really coming up. And this is part of cancer as well, because it really kind of forces us to establish, where do we feel safe? Where do we feel secure? How can we tap into that? Where does the soul find its own nourishment in relation to those types of Cancerian themes? And I'll tell you what, this is totally vulnerable. And so and I'm, not everybody's going to relate. And I know some people absolutely are going to relate to this. So I recently got a message that my 25th high school reunion is apparently happening on Saturday. It sounds like it was probably kind of a last minute thing. I have no idea, actually, but it is happening. And, it's amazing that I have this capacity to face these certain, like, really dark issues, like within myself, and work with people and experiences that are traumatizing, right? I've just done a lot of work with people who are really, and my own work too, and just like face it head on. But I'll tell you what, I stiffened up like you wouldn't believe when I read that. And I was like, high school reunion? I have to go back to that place? Oh boy. It was, how it is for everyone. And especially as an empath, and especially as unresolved trauma from my childhood, right? I mean, and many of us have gone through similar things. And it was just one of those things that I was like, oh, I've been able to avoid this because I've been living on the other side of the country. But now I'm literally right here. And I also realized that the sun is going to come right into my 7th house, right? 0 degrees Leo is my descendant, right as this is happening. And I was just like, you know what? I have to like step into the not into the void. I have to step into the relationship. Like I have to, if I want to really get that creative expression, that sustainment that comes from a sun in your 7th house transiting, I have to actually take the step into it. And, I might find myself pleasantly surprised of maybe being the center of attention, right? That's a sun in Leo like that. That's definitely what that is, especially in the 7th house. So, not that was the reason why I was just like, I should do it, but it was more of like, here's an obstacle. Maybe I need to embody more of that kind of visionary or just more confidence in my approach, and realize how foolish I've been for holding on to this really old identity that is not relevant anymore to right now, and then step back into this space renewed. So Chiron is a big part of this conversation for everybody, because guess what? Chiron's stationing retrograde on Monday. So, and Chiron's in Aries, Jupiter's in Aries. They're both going to be retrograde by the end of this month, coming into August 1st. So whoever Aries is in your chart, just especially know that the Chiron wounding and the sense of identity about ourselves that we seem to not be able to get out of, and it's just going to get that much more like, unavoidable, more internalized. Perhaps the mirror is going to be kind of turned inward on this. And with Jupiter stationing retrograde, right? Talk about the balloon deflating in this area. So that's something to keep in mind too. But it's all for it's all for this internalized deep processing and integration. Remember, all of these outer planets and Chiron. I mean, Chiron is between Saturn and Uranus. So from Jupiter. And even the asteroid belt, right? Vesta is retrograde opposite Draco right now. We're going to talk about that for a minute. And Ceres, the dwarf planet, Pallas. Vesta is the one that is retrograde right now. So, but from Jupiter beyond out to Pluto, it's all retrograde. Well, except Uranus. It's coming, though. All retrograde. And these are transpersonal planets, right? They cover larger tracts of time, larger cohorts of people. Like the energy and the resonance has to do with something that is more than just the individual experience making its way through all of this. So, knowing where these are in your chart helps to show where this type of experience, this internalized turning inward. And we already feel it with Saturn. We've definitely been feeling it with Pluto and recently Neptune. So it's just going to keep continuing. So the pressure builds, but the obstacle is presenting itself, and the Cancerian energy has been kind of priming us in a lot of ways to establish where those boundaries are, where we feel safe emotionally, where we have been isolated, where we have acted out as a result of not feeling safe and secure, like what really touches to that deep, vulnerable place. Boy, it was coming out night after night, and I'd wake up and I'm like, dude, I'm still feeling that, huh? And every single time it gets less impactful, I think. And it's not to say that those experiences in the physical now, right, of feeling that way aren't valid or okay. It's just they're old now, and they are ready to be released. So there's lots of ways that we can be working with this energy. So let's get into today's astrology and see where it's going to take us. So like I said, Sun, Mercury, Cazimi, Venus it's Gemini today, opposite the galactic center, right? Again, liberation from the past. This degree, 28 degrees of Gemini in the Sabian symbols is, it's about bankruptcy, right? It's about release from unbearable pressures. And when we talk about Gemini, it's like we eventually get to this point where we know we're going to be able to just like let it all go, right? The back and forth has a place where we have to plant the flag, right? The plant is going to grow leaves and stems and all of this vegetative growth when it first pops out of the soil and it's reaching towards the sun. But without that root system establishing itself, it's going to die, right? It can only get so much from the above ground reality. So this is Venus just coming off a trine with Saturn, actually. This is where Venus has kind of realized that we eventually get to just let go and make a decision. And so when Venus comes into Cancer very soon, during this weekly report here, then we will feel and embody that decision. And it'll be a very symbolic. And this is actually an activation. 0 degrees is a galactic degree. Number one, it's like that crack between worlds. And much like the soil is like the space, that space, or the firmament, right? Meeting the ether or whatever, right? It is that space where the two worlds are able to connect to each other. And so 0 degrees Cancer as a starseed activation is that axis of Cancer Capricorn is actually in relation to Andromeda, right? So this, again, it's about natural fulfillment and growth, and the idea that life has a process, and being in alignment with it and in tune with it, and making a conscious, emotional, almost spiritual decision to participate in strengthening that whole growth process by establishing, the strength and fortitude of that boundary, whatever it is, right? The womb, the Holy Grail, the divine feminine, right? Isis, Syrian starseed activation as well as part of that. But what you see here, speaking of Chiron, so the moon was in a sextile to Chiron very early this morning. This looks like this is 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the thing about Chiron right now, and I really want to do an entire Catalyst classroom on Chiron, especially where it's at now, because it's in conjunction with Tau Ceti, and it's a starseed origin, and there's a lot there that I want to be able to bring forward, and Chiron being what Chiron represents is really, really bringing a lot of that victim savior, or that sense of almost helplessness about who we are, and releasing ourselves again from those old identities. I really want to do the next theme on that and bring out those starseed activations, because there's just so much here. It's so rich. But one thing I will say is that I think that out of a sense of feeling like it's our identity to just kind of go into that inner withdrawal, and we have. I think a lot of people have been doing that, right? And attempting to generate that energy within themselves, and not even just generate it, but also generate and activate it within themselves, right? That there's an inward withdrawal in an attempt to recreate the process that normally happens when we take that spirit and apply it to the objective world, to matter, to a relationship. That's all this seventh house stuff. And so it's more about learning how to do this ourselves. And sometimes that happens with a negative, almost narcissistic, I don't need anyone to do this. In fact, I don't need polarization. I don't need to participate. I can just create this energy myself. So Chiron has just been, establishing how people are doing that as a bypassing mechanism, rather than facing or addressing or bridging the material, or the establishment of Saturn over, bridging it to Uranus, which is our higher consciousness. And truly, in Greek mythology is this, the sky god, Uranus and Gaia. They're the ones that created it. So at least they created this planet. So Chiron, and the story of Chiron is that bridge. So the moon at 17 degrees Aquarius, this is in trine to Rigel. This is very much about protect. Essential to have some element about you that functions like a watchdog. And again, this energy is really in a way to transmute and kind of lift us out of this old identity into, that has its place, but there's a way to establish protection against, not even against, but again, it's in relation to the collective resonance that still allows your individuality to be maintained, because it's important, but also to not to just shut down entirely from the experience of relationship, because it's the only way that we're really going to transmute anything. So I thought that was a really very potent activation that happened this morning with the moon in Aquarius. So and it's continuing. It's going to square in Uranus. It'd be a T square to the nodes, and then is in conjunction to Saturn. So let's look at that. And then in a conjunction to Saturn. Boy, oh boy, Saturn retrograde is just ruthless. And so beyond this is where the moon then comes into a square with Uranus and Taurus. So it's kind of, it's somewhat like a mutual reception, because Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius and the moon is exalted in Taurus, which means that it's not in its rulership, but it's still very powerful here. So there is some understanding that can be gained even in the tension of a square. So the moon and Uranus in this square, gathering all of the resources in order to, kind of mitigate something that came through. Dane Rudger calls it a karmic visitation. And it's necessary. We kind of have to dig down to the skill and the courage to bring the destructive potential of these moments under control. And of course, Uranus is the destructive potential, right? Uranus is the karmic visitation through a trigger event or something shocking or very rapidly changing. It also represents the cosmic, like the higher consciousness, the resonance of the whole. And the square here is, I think it has a lot to do with, while we may feel like needing this need to control, like within ourselves, our emotions, right? There is this sense of having to get our emotions under control because Uranus and Taurus, that is making really rapid or sudden changes or disruptions or, even innovations to the realm of material, physical health, our bodies, our currency, our resources, all across the board with Taurus, and our fertility, physically, like literally, as well as esoterically. There has, maybe we don't want to bring it under control. Uranus certainly doesn't. There is a sense of out of controlness in order to allow something new and spontaneous to emerge. And our feeling is just like, we got to get ourselves under control. We have to bring all the skill and courage to the situation so that it's not destructive. And in that conflict of this square right now is something to just lean into, right? Because then the moon is going to come right after that and be in a T-square with her own nodal axis. Again, and you can see it right here, right before she comes into a conjunction with Saturn. So the opposition with the nodes, right, of discerning what is important to us versus a soul history that is aligned with obeying our own conscience in relation to the power that has been generated as part of our participation. That's something to consider with Scorpio, right? That we've all participated in creating a system, and then there's a moment of release where the individual is like, you know what? I'm going to follow my own conscience. I'm not going to follow these orders. But the orders were created by a military that was supported by a system of people, right? And so the North Node is about discerning what in our physical reality of value and inherent worth in nature itself is valuable, and being able to discern what actually is valuable rather than getting caught up again in the in what is detailed in some sort of scriptural format of just like, you can get really pulled into like all of the signs and symbols and this means that and that all of that stuff, or into the scriptures themselves and be like, it's this and this and this. This is much more about we're growing and evolving by learning to discern what for ourselves, what is valuable, inherently valuable. And of course, this is the realm of Uranus and Mars. And so the T-square here this is about resilience, and resilience within our own emotional self, right? In our own intuitive landscape, our subconscious, right? The feels. This is the adversity that we can tap in, or the resilience we can tap into in order to face the adversity is really where we release and harness the tension of this opposition in this T-square. Now, it's not going to feel good from either side in terms of the soul, but we know, at least here now in this present experience and the way that we feel, is again having the courage to face things that are not going the way that we want, or we're feeling disillusioned in some ways. And again, this is when we are able to find that, feel that within ourselves. I think it's going to give us a lot more impetus to keep moving, right? To discern what is actually invaluable, which requires that we discover and explore and again to be in communion with the natural world, or to what is right in front of us. So, and then right after this, you get the moon in conjunction with Saturn. And thankfully, this is going to be kind of one of those, I don't want to say reality checks. I don't think that is what it is necessarily. It's going to be like, okay, I feel now what I have to do, right? I feel now what it's going to take for me to find that place of wisdom where I can communicate it, as opposed to, being swayed all over the place by my own passions, which, is Leo. And we're getting there, right? I mean, we're soon to be in Leo season. So we want to make sure that the vessel that holds us is secure and nurturing and nourishing us, so that we do not, by virtue of expressing ourselves so brilliantly through our creativity, our identity, and Mercury through our words and communication, that we don't we're not just like, we don't like completely turn into a desert within ourselves. And certainly we don't want to be responsible for creating that anywhere else. And so this moon and Saturn is very much about our responsibility, and really kind of emotionally, it might emotionally harden some people, but in Aquarius, I feel like it's just going to make things very like, you got to do what you got to do. And now you feel that strength and responsibility and that sense of structure within your own emotional self, so that then you can step forward and be like, okay, this is what happened to me. This is what I learned, as people are going through their own, facing their obstacles over the weekend. So let's see here. That's today, right? This is today. So let's move into tomorrow, actually, and look at what is happening. So the moon finishes her transit of Aquarius before going void, of course, with a trine to Venus, who is finishing her time in Gemini, right? So she's coming into conjunction with Betelgeuse, also very much part of the Catalyst Classroom conversation and material this week, because Procyon, Sirius, and Betelgeuse are in a configuration called the Winter Triangle in astronomy, and we'll be looking at that as well, because it's part of this conversation. There's a reason they made those connections to these places. So Venus is opposite the galactic center. She is in a conjunction with Betelgeuse, right? This is like the largest star, right? Betelgeuse is in the armpit of Orion as he's raising his club or his weapon, and 27 to 28 degrees. Again, there's that bankruptcy, right? And there's this sense of liberating oneself from unbearable pressure of the constant back and forth, right? That it never will go anywhere productive. It's only when we make a decision where that's really going to happen. And so the trine from her to the moon. So this is a very feminine, but very air-oriented. So again, this Queen of Swords, this Princess of Swords energy, that is very, very receptive, very sensitive to, very intuitive when it comes to consciousness, individually and collectively or socially. And they are supporting each other in this way. And it's like when we release ourselves through bankruptcy, then we can actually start stacking what real resources we have emotionally, right? To be ready for the coming winter, right? That is what 28 degrees of Aquarius really represents. And this is about making every single thing you do, again, spiritual significance, even the things that are so mundane, like chopping firewood and stacking it, right? Sweeping your floor. But this is more about harnessing the energy from one's own passion, one's own creative expression, one's own voice, and being able to store it for needs later when, I don't know, maybe there isn't as much of the sunlight to warm the wayward consciousness or the collective consciousness. So this trine in general is kind of like a very stabilizing, but also very receptive, very clever, but also very emotionally connected and stable reality of, you gotta just let it go, right? If you keep embodying the back and forth, and we will, right? Because Venus is going to come into Cancer, and we are going to feel in our bodies and in our sense of what is valuable and beautiful and harmonious, and in our relationships, anything like that, and how it feels to us. We're making a decision, and we will feel that decision. And we've already gone down this pathway because the suns crossed this, and Mercury, they were Cazimi when this happened. So remember when that was going on too. 0 degrees Cancer. And no, that's not right. They were Kazemi somewhere else. But still, though, this 0 degrees Cancer is the solstice. And that's, remember where that was, too, when the sun crossed over this point. So, and Mercury certainly crossed over this point many times because of its retrograde. So, unbearable pressure. There's something within, there's something built into the system, much like bankruptcy. That's just like, you know what? It's never, the best way to balance this out is to just erase the debt. And that's going to make so much room in your soul and in your own feels to actually stack up what you need in terms of the resonance. You'd be able to hold the collective resonance when you're letting go of just the feedback loop. All right. And it's important. We've learned so much by all of this Gemini, and I assure you, Mars is going to come into Gemini in the fall, and we're going to, really act on these things. So there'll be more time. If you're really into the Gemini thing, there'll be more time to act on those things. So when we move today's the 16th. So the moon then moves into, or not today, tomorrow is the 16th. Then the moon's going to move into Pisces. Oh my. And that's tomorrow's when we have Mercury conjunct the sun, 25 degrees Cancer. This is where the story of Procyon starts to really get like the downloads, right? The endowment in some ways, coming not only through our own mind, but through our creativity, through our voice, like together, right? This is going to be almost like being overtaken in some ways, but not in a negative, like possessive way, but I've been waiting for this endowment. I have been creating the container, the nest, whatever it is, in order to have this power descend within me. And this is, the reason that this is so connected to Procyon is because of the boundary that almost immediately comes about as a result of this, right? It makes one really powerful and strong, which also attracts quite a bit. And so in order to protect the essence of what is contained within, there is a very strong test of that, right? That's coming. So the conjunction of Mercury and the sun here is going to be so like fulfilling in so many ways. And it's going to be after they are both in opposition to Pluto, or, after this, it's going to be that 1-2 punch of just like, ugh. And as the storm rages through the canyon and we are going through this cathartic event that's almost forcing it's a confrontation, a karmic confrontation. We will have already embodied this, the spiritual endowment that we have been intentionally creating the space for. And it's like, it is very masculine in terms of Mercury and the sun, but they're in Cancer, right? So Osiris, Mercury, or Hermes, Cancer, Sirius, or Osiris, or Isis, right? The sun, Horus, right? You can see the divine trinity all meeting together in this Kazemi. So very powerful with the moon in Cancer, or Pisces. And this is important because the moon is going to actually, by the time we get to Sunday, the 17th, actually, this is going to be, I feel like, a really, this is where it's going to be like that beautiful, spiritual, transcendent experience. This is where the reception really comes from. These trines to Neptune, Mercury trine to Neptune, the sun trine to Neptune, Venus enters Cancer, right? This is so beautiful if we are prepared for it. And Neptune has not been a source of escapism or fanaticism or addiction and total delusion, right? If we are really allowing our intuition to deepen, when Mercury and the sun both in a trine to Neptune retrograde, wow, this is like direct transmission, okay? And it's it's coming through the feels, and it's coming through the connection to the sacred feminine within ourselves and creating that space. Again, it's the only way that it's going to come through. And the sun is in a, the sun in a trine to, as well, the sun and Mercury. Sorry, I was getting caught up in my notes. So what else is happening Sunday? So the moon is also going to conjunct Neptune on Sunday as well. So if we go forward a day here and we look at the chart, we'll see that and it's not that wide. You can see that there's actually a trine that is like a double kite in some ways, because you can see the grand water trine with the south node, Mercury, and the sun and Neptune. It's pretty wide still. It's like 5 degrees with the nodes, but I'd say it's still really relevant. And then it turns into a kite because you have the north node up here at the tip, and then the same thing is going on, except even wider with Pluto in this opposition, which will become way more. If we move through Sunday the 17th, you'll start to see things light up even stronger. So here's our trine, right? Our water trine with Neptune and the sun and Mercury. Normally, this could be with Mercury and Neptune. It really could influence a much more like just being taken over, right? Something coming in. And with Neptune involved, that's absolutely a possibility. And, if you are not of sound mind, right? If you are caught up in a delusion, if you are not seeing things clearly, even though the fog has been burning off, what it could be just a lot of really intense emotions moving through you that are like not even yours necessarily. But again, you're creating a space that allows that. And compassion really builds, and a sense of connection really builds here as well. So this is so lovely. I feel like it also is going to be very, very powerful emotionally in a all those feels, right? Abandonment, fear of losing something, the grief that's coming out, this sense of just like having to surrender, right? They can't do anything else anymore. It's just like that moment where you're just like, fine, like truly just letting go. That also can be a big part of this trine over the weekend, which is Sunday the 17th, July 17th. So we keep moving through Sunday, little bits at a time. Now you're starting to see that the moon's getting closer to Neptune. It's coming into a sextile with Uranus, right? Pisces and Taurus. And again, this is like direct transmission because there is a space for something, something new to emerge that is still part of the unbroken chain of our connection to our own spirit. And as we move through, there it is. It's starting to get stronger again. So the moon's going to have a trine to her own south node and make this water trine even stronger and this kite even stronger. And then you start to see the opposition with Mercury and the sun to Pluto. And this is really, I feel like this is a big capstone of the weekend, is this opposition. Big time with textured. But the idea is that there are no souls incarnating, no new souls incarnating back into the Procyon system. And so any soul that left on a mission, a Starseed mission, wherever they went to, it has been closed off from going home. And that is, boy, oh boy, if you need a story in order to connect to your feelings of abandonment or being forced out or having to reestablish where your root system to your own emotional security really lies. Like, what if you're disowned, right? That's what that feels like, abandoned, disowned, pushed away. And it's really because the need to protect was so strong, because the storm is raging through the canyon, and there's only so much, there can't be letting souls come back in while that's happening. And I think that that's what's, there's a lesson there, and there is a deep grief, but there's also a lesson to learn for those starseeds about, okay, well, you establish a new home, you deepen your root system into something more. And the Syrian starseeds, they know all about this, because this is the shaman, right? This is the priestess, the priest. They are the medium them in a lot of ways for this experience, because the capacity to tap into that changeless void, the transcendental wisdom that's infinite, is how you're able to walk between worlds, how you're able to heal energetically, how you're able to, have a relationship and a guardianship, a custodianship. But when you are faced with protection, that gets to that isolationist and the Procyon starseeds. It's built into the U.S. natal chart. It's opposite. Now it's opposite of where the natal Pluto is. It wasn't. Procyon wasn't exactly in relation to us in this place when this happened. You have to look that up, but because it moves, right? Well, we move, and the stars, fixed stars move relative to that. So this is going to be the capstone, I feel like, of a lot of the weekend coming into Monday morning. And so, I mean, I feel like if you're going to even get any sleep on Sunday, it's going to, I mean, just tapping into everything in that space is going to be really easy. And then also tapping into the story and the way the Pluto opposition, amplifies it so much, as if you're losing something that you identified as home. And I'm not suggesting that's good or bad. We should do it. I mean, some people are intentionally forcing it for a reset. Other people are fighting tooth and nail to not lose it. And I don't know what's going to happen necessarily, but the story is there for all of us to learn and grow and evolve. And that's the weekend. And then just to get an idea of what the rest of the week has in store, of course, like I said, the Mercury opposite Pluto, a little bit less of a ego battle than the Sun opposite Pluto, because Mercury is able to move into the underworld and back out easily, is a shepherd of souls in a lot of ways. And so this opposition is kind of like, well, this is our way to take ourselves out of the mental anguish, I think, of the experience of Pluto right now, because all returns back and fertilizes the next cycle. And I'm not advocating for that at all. It's just built into the materium, and recognizing that our spirit never dies is kind of like what we're here to like figure out, like in real time here. So the next day, the 19th, which is going to be Tuesday. Let's just go ahead. This is when Chiron stations, right? And so all of that energy around how we generate and how we maintain and how we create from the spark of life within us is, and how we have bypassed healing from old identities around that. That's just going to become that much more painfully obvious with Chiron retrograde, or it's going to be just like internalized so deeply that people are going to start getting even sicker, I think, as a result of some of these things. They all work hand in hand. And Mercury is going to enter Leo. And so be ready for that as well. Oh, here we go. Mercury enters Leo, right? And so this is really where we let our voice be expressed through the channel of communication, through the channel of our mental activity, right? Blood rushing to the head in many ways, and spreading all through the collective, through the voice, through the expression, exploration, discovery, right? Here we go. I feel like this is a big part of the discovery and the of who we, what is our voice? Who are we? Right? That's what Leo is really all about. So what else? That's the 20th. 21st, we're going to see here that we have Chiron station retrograde. Mercury comes into Leo. The Sun is opposite Pluto retrograde at this point, like exactly. Wednesday is our third quarter moon. as we see here, while the sun is still opposite Pluto. And that means that the moon actually is going to be in a T-square with this opposition, as it is in a third quarter square to the sun. Boy, oh boy, this is pretty awesome. And the moon is in conjunction, look at that, 27 degrees Aries. That's the Andromeda galaxy. So another starseed activation. So sun and Pluto in opposition with this Procyon story, with the destruction of the establishment that Pluto is representing in Capricorn right now, and the matrix, the materium, or the institution that we consider reality. And this T-square with the moon in Aries is just like there, this is where we make the most of it. Like, we face it within ourselves. We face the disappointed audience that is really just our own self, right? We face ourselves through the obstacles. We face the things that we fear. We face the ways that we've disappointed ourselves, right? That we've experienced disappointment. We face it and realize that there is always the opportunity to start again. But when we are getting to the point here of getting very close to Taurus, we're also accepting that eventually you have to allow substantiation of all of that potential. And in this moment is the kind of responsibility that we all need to take with what we are going to be substantiating as a result of the connection, especially to this relationship. And we can either be on the front lines of the evolution and revolution within our own selves and feel how we have all participated in creating this, or again, we can just moon in Aries, there's just a lot of tempers flaring and words flying, arguments happening, just like bursts of expression. And in late Aries in particular, in this T-square, this is a crisis. I guarantee you this is going to be a crisis where people are like, oh shit, how do I take responsibility for how this is, within myself, about how this is all unfolded so far and what it's bringing up. Oh, it will require some internal reorganization, right? A crisis of our own consciousness. But the thing about the Andromedan galaxy, starseeds in particular, is that the real mastery of this starseed origin is not to shy away from that moment, right? Real self-responsibility requires that we take into consideration how our spark, how our potential, how our desire and our action in relation to it has an impact on the world outside of us. Otherwise, we wouldn't come into form, right? If we didn't have that experience, or that experience is a direct result. So, wings, wings out, right? I mean, full freedom to be oneself in any given moment. But if we're going to be informed, then that means that there is a responsibility we have to accept. This T-square is going to be a huge reorganization, collectively, as well as for each of us personally. And then the sun enters Leo on the 21st, which is, let's see here, the 22nd, which is Friday. And so we'll just take a look at that real quick, just to get some visual representation here, as the moon is moving through Taurus now, and is going to meet all of our friends in Taurus as well. And the sun comes into Leo. So I'm going to leave it there for today's astrology report. I'm also going to see here, I'm going to check in with the stream, see if there's any other questions before I sign off. The full moon brought to light, Emily says, Barb, you're exactly right. The full moon brought to light a whole new set of soul searching and growth obstacles for me. But for me, that's where the goods are, standing still in the tornado. Boy, oh boy, you guys are nailing it right now. The obstacles are really showing themselves. And I should post the actual card reading I did this morning, because I do them anyway. And it's seriously it seriously just spelled it out in the card reading too. It's just coming from every angle. And I love how you said so a whole new set of soul searching and growth obstacles, but for me, that's where the goods are. I love that. I mean, that is totally facing the obstacles, and that is totally leaning into the discomfort and standing still in the tornado. I mean, absolutely, that really encompasses the way that we're all going to successfully thrive through the next definitely through the next couple of weeks, but certainly I would say even longer than that. Like learning how this feels and what to do and to activate it, and not shy away from it, right? And so, and learning how to use these tools in order to enhance that process of your own spiritual growth. Wow. Thank you guys so much for participating. Thank you for your comments and your chats. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking this content, sharing this content. Like I said, commenting. All of those things actually have a real world impact on this channel growing. So if you value that, you can do any one of those things on any of the platforms. I'm on Odyssey, BitChute, Rumble, and of course we're streaming here on YouTube. That's all in the description box below as well. And yeah, guys, have a great weekend. Don't be afraid of the obstacles. I mean, it's okay if you are, and know that the courage to stand firm and to know the difference between where you end and something else begins is almost paramount to being able to then face these obstacles within your own self and come out of them growing, with growth and truly as a more full version, right? We're going for holism between our spirit and our physical form here on Earth School. So thank you, my friends, for being here. I truly appreciate every single one of you. You're all doing so well. I did so many readings that I did this week. I'm so proud of you, because I can just feel that we are all like doing such difficult, deep work, and we're not doing it for the collective anymore. Like, that's over, right? The age of Aquarius is definitely, we all got to do it for ourselves. And this, man, that third quarter moon T-square opposition with Pluto and the sun at that Procyon, that galactic degree, I think that that's going to become a very irritated, exposed type of nerve, but at the same time, it's going to be really essential to that, not losing everything that we have just felt as we went through this full moon, this super full moon, right? And all of this deep Lilith energy. So for those of you who are subscribed, I will be uploading the Catalyst Classroom content by the end of the day. Thank you for your subscriptions there. And, what's going on Telegram and the chat. There's always something going on there. And there is a chat group that people can post to directly as well. So that's really cool, and like keeping the discussion going, I think, is also really important. So bye guys, have a great weekend, and take very good care of yourself. I love you guys. Take care of each other the best you can as well, and we will be together on Monday for the Starseed Ministry. Bye.